decided I need to cut some strips off of my piece of plywood that I have set out here. This is 3/4 birch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 7 ply, very stable. I'm going to use that for my fence on my crosscut sled, and I want to use that for the base plate for my tapering jig. So first I'm going to cut my strips down for my crosscut sled. I need one at 3 inches and one at 2 5/8. That'll make up the backside, the one closest to you, the fence. The reason they're different is I'm going to put a T slot, sliding T slot in the top of that, so that I can put a stop, a sliding stop, I guess. The back side, I need two pieces cut down to 3 inches, and then we will go on to the taper jig. I don't have my final measurements on what I want to make that yet, but we'll get to that here shortly. So what I decided, 8 inches on my base for my tapering jig. I got that ripped down, and I have one piece left over. I got to set that aside so I don't get it mixed up with the other ones I just cut down. This is about 3 5/8 left over, and I'm sure I'll find a use for it. I decided to make it 32 inches long. I'm going to cut that off on my miter box saw, and we'll get that cut. I want to route in a couple of dado grooves in here to accept this T-track. This is the track I'm going to use. It's got a sliding T in it. And get those put in. And then I got a couple clamps that I got for it that'll clamp the piece down to the tapering jig. Well, I decided I'm going to put 3 of these on here. I got them marked out. They're about 3/4 of an inch wide. I got to center this one yet. And I'll put one down on this end. That way my clamp can slide up in there and clamp the piece down that I want to taper on. I got to see how thick that is. I didn't even measure it yet. We'll try that next. Well, I got those dados routed in. I got my piece here, so I can check to make sure I'm got the right size. I set it just below the level of the top of this base for my tapering jig. I used this straight edge, couple of C-clamps, and my little hand router. That worked out all right. I need to get my bench cleaned off so I can actually use my router table over there. But that worked out good. I'm going to drill a couple more holes in these so that I can get some screws put back in them. But that worked pretty good. And we'll get that done and go from there. Well, we got the dados cut in here. I took my orbital sander and I sanded the top, sanded the back of it. I'm going to take my little sanding block that I have here and I'm going to just knock these edges down just a little bit. I did take a scrap piece of 3/4 plywood that's the same size as that. I wrapped some sandpaper around it and ran it through the bottoms of these and just cleaned up the bottoms and the edges. So next I want to take this block and just go around all of them and get those knocked down so they're cleaned up and smooth, I guess. I did decide to do the back edge of these on the bottom. Got that all smoothed up. I got the faces of it all the way around, and I think it's good to go. I didn't have any very short screws in my supply over here, so I had to dig around in my secret weapon something that I had put together a long time ago, but I found some real tiny screws, and I'm going to use some super glue and glue these down in the tracks, and then put these screws in to reinforce it. At this time, I can't decide if I'm going to put a runner that will slide in here, if I'm going to attach it here, because I want to be able to use this jig more than just for tapering. If I can put my jig together and use it for more than one thing, that'd be great. I'm thinking, I've seen people use their jig or make a separate jig. They can set their saw fence up. They can clamp another piece of wood down to it. Let's say this piece had a real uneven edge. It was all wonky. We can put this in here up against our fence. And here's one reason I don't know if I want uh, that rail on the bottom there, the runner. So you can bring your saw over here, lock it down, and you can run this straight through, raise your blade up just so it's up past here. That way you can get a nice straight edge on that. Now you can take your jig off your table and turn your piece around with a nice straight edge on it. Now you can use your fence and get a piece that's straight side to side. So I want to make sure I can use it for more than just a taper jig. The taper jig is going to work something similar to this. Let's say I need a 2.5 down to a 1/2 inch over here. I'll put my my clamps in here. They'll hold each of that down. Now I can use that to cut that taper. Something I just thought of. That's not going to work very well because I'm going to have that runner on the bottom. But I think if I put one on there, I'm going to make it so it's removable, and that way I can still use my sled for 2 things instead of just one. I had to dig around a little bit, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to use, but I got my awl out, and I also have this center punch, but it doesn't have a super sharp tip on it because I want to get these holes punched in here and then maybe take a little drill bit and get those started. I'm going to see what the awl looks like first because it's got a sharp point, and that looks like that might work all right. We're going to try that. I found the smallest drill bit that I own, which I seem to always break those. I'm not sure about everybody else, but I'm always breaking those. Let's see how this works out. I don't want to go real deep. I just want something to get the tip of that screw started. I definitely don't want to go all the way through it. I would cry the blues. That looks like that might work. I'm going to try one with just the screw before I put glue down on it, because once I do that, it's not coming back out of there. Well, that was a fail. These are some old screws that I'd found, and they have a straight slot on them for the bit. They are so small, and I have bifocals and fat old fingers. So next time I get to the hardware store, hopefully later this week, I'm going to pick up some that are at least a Phillips, and hopefully we'll do that. I'm going to go ahead and glue these in so that glue can set up. I did this one already. I'm going to do these two, and we'll check back in with us to see how we turn out on the screw situation. I just can't get it in there, so we'll try it, see how it goes. All right, so here's what we got set up. That's worked pretty well. I got these hold down clamps, one in each one. Um, these are fairly long, these T-bolts are, but that'll also allow me to cut larger and thicker material. I did want to show you too, if you need to, you can reverse these if this part's going to be in your way for some reason. I still not convinced about putting a runner on my sled. Right now I'm thinking to do this. In order to do a wider piece like this is, I have this piece of plywood in here, same as what this was made out of. I can set my taper, let's say 2 inches down to a ½ inch, and then I can slide this through. That's my intention anyway, is to slide that through. I may have to do something to temporarily attach this piece, but I think that's gonna work. I really don't want to put that runner on because I want to be able to use that, like I was saying earlier, for uh, uh, being able to cut a straight edge on a piece that maybe is crooked or that you come across. These will back up quite a ways, so we can use it like that. We can lock it down like this. And that way we can utilize a piece here. Let's say we have a piece that's only 4 inches wide and we set it in there. This will move in and out to get the exact taper that we want on it. It'd be a lot easier with a narrower piece of stock because you can line up this edge with your first measurement, 2 inches. You'd line that up. So you come over, mark it at 2. Get this piece out of here. Oh, we can even use that as the example. So you can mark that at 2 inches right here. Down here, let's say we wanted a ½ inch, or let's say 3/4. We can get our jig set up in here. Now we line this 2-inch mark up with the edge of our jig. We do the 3/4 inch mark down here on this end. Tighten our clamp down. Tighten our clamp down. I'd probably turn that around the other way. Now, when we run that through our jig, or through our saw rather, we'll slide our fence over here. We'll put this right on our saw blade, right on the edge of our saw blade. Then we can take this and run that through. Run that through our saw. I think that's gonna work out. I got some bugs to work out, it looks like, but we'll get there eventually. Anyway, I think that's a success. I'll be able to use that for 2 different purposes. I also saw on my watching some woodworkers on YouTube. I also saw on YouTube, I was watching some woodworkers on there, and the tenon jig that I made earlier, they were using theirs for a jig to resaw stock. I don't have a very big bandsaw. It's just a small bench top, and it's kind of old, and the motor doesn't run all that great. Uh, but they used their tenoning jig as a resaw jig where they could set it up on the fence and then run their whatever they're resawing through. And you wouldn't be able to do a real big piece, but I think that'd work. That way I got two uses for that jig. I got two for this one. My next jig is going to be my crosscut sled. I got some 1/2 inch plywood sitting over here. I'm going to use that for the base. I've got those strips that I cut down. I'm going to use those for both the front and the back fence. And we'll work on that next. Um, I'm going to like this for that project that I have for Red Dog Laser. We're making the 3 nails, 1 cross plaque. It's kind of neat looking. I'll show you what that looks like. So I don't recall who I saw doing this on YouTube, but I thought I really like that. I'm going to try making those. And I had a good response on my Facebook business page for Red Dog Laser. And this is kind of my prototype, but I used some old wood. I thought I had some old material that I was going to use, and it was pretty bad shape. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that. But um, like I said, this is the prototype. I made a couple changes. I'm going to rabbet this backer piece into the frame. That's probably the number one change. Get that in there. Um, but cutting these nails on this jig is going to be way easier. I was using the table saw trying to lay out what I needed for an angle, and it just it was being pretty difficult. So with that tapering jig, that's going to be a lot easier. And then also with the crosscut sled, I'll be able to cut these pieces of backer. This is some old 3/8 inch cedar siding. I had some left over from a project. It's rough sawn, kind of looks good with all the rest of it. But then I took my torch and I torched around on the frame. I did not do this backer board, but I did the cross, and I also put these on here. I thought that was kind of a neat touch. Anyway, we're going to go on to our next project, and we'll see you again another day. Thank you, guys. Bye.